Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our video series about issues related to COVID-19 virus here in Vermont. Today, I'm going to have my friend Andrew Allen with us. He is the owner of iMarket Solutions. He's got a lot of experience with small businesses and what they're going through every day, and then obviously very much in the COVID-19 situation, and has been dealing with some of the resources that are available at the federal level in particular. And we'll try to get into some of those details so that small business owners, any business owners, can learn a little bit more about how to get through some of this process to try to keep your businesses solvent and maybe set them up for success coming out of the backside of this pandemic. So Andrew, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, David. Happy to be here.
Let's start with the lay of the land for businesses, especially small businesses in Vermont right now because of the crisis. What have you experienced and what are people experiencing?
A lot of Vermonters, a lot of small business owners, they've had to shut down immediately. Restaurants, lodging, really anyone serving the public went from consistent daily revenues down to zero. There are a lot of companies that have been able to stay in business because they were already working in tech or in a service that is essential, and so they've kept going. But even those businesses have really had to cut back. When the bill first came out, I read the entire thing, 897 pages or something, to find out what the tools and mechanisms were going to be put into place, and it did give me a ton of hope because they really have structured a program that allows businesses fewer than 500 employees, which is really most of Vermont businesses, to really get a very strong helping hand to get up and running. But that doesn't change the impact in the short run of all those employees that got laid off and all those business owners who, if in fact you were already a little shaky on your balance sheet or you had just made a big investment and really expanded your business, all those businesses are the ones that are suffering most because this was ill-timed, unexpected sort of behavior, and it was a tough time to be making a risk like that. But given that, when you're looking at the small businesses around Vermont, we're so dependent on tourism. We have a lot of people who are just had to shutter the doors. They've been working hard to switch to curbside delivery, setting up websites, do online ordering, but all of that takes time. And you're burning money every day when you're completely shut down.
So obviously a lot of these businesses have some really hard choices in front of them and those business owners. So when the time comes and we're trying to move out of the crisis, do you have some ideas on what the future looks like for some of those businesses and sort of working their way out of it?
It's going to be, I think it's going to be a difficult road for a lot of businesses, but the best way that most businesses in Vermont, and again, the bill and specifically the Paycheck Protection Program is the fastest and most effective way to get people's paychecks flowing again. The beauty of the program, especially in the original draft of the bill, essentially allows a business owner to self-verify their financial situation. A very common misconception is you have to prove in your financial numbers losses, where a lot of people won't feel those losses for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. The beauty of the program is you just say, look, I need help. I want to hire my people back. So by signing up for the Paycheck Protection Program, you're immediately required to bring your entire staff back. And in bringing your entire staff back, all those people will now have paychecks. And to me, that's the fastest way to help the employees of the state of Vermont get some money flowing to them and to put these, it's not even putting the business back into operation, it's getting the employees' paychecks flowing. And the absolute most wonderful part about it is the loan forgiveness. It's essentially a loan. You're applying for the Paycheck Protection Program, and you are in fact taking out a loan, but they are going to forgive about 80% of the loan once you actually rehire all your employees, keep them on for 8 weeks, and you are going to be your entire payroll will be forgiven and covered by the government. Your utilities, your rent payments will all be covered so that you can bring your employees back right away, get that money flowing, even if you can't be in business. So I think that's one of the things that people have been a little confused about is that the Paycheck Protection Program is really a stimulus program. It's a way to get money flowing back into the economy, to get the employees to getting their wages, getting their 401k match, getting all that, they're getting their health care back. All of those things right now are on hold for many Vermont businesses. And it's essentially risk-free. Even if you have to spend more money than the loan through Paycheck Protection, it's only a 2% interest rate. You don't have to pay it back it'll start paying it back for at least 6 months. It's a long-term loan. It's really a fantastic program to start getting the people of Vermont to have their paychecks, their health care starting to flow immediately with almost no risk to the business owner.
It sounds like this is the #1 program for businesses to get in line for work with your financial institution. How does that work exactly? And can you walk people through it a little bit if they're a small business owner?
The way a small business would handle this is go to the bank you already have a relationship with. That is the #1 sort of rule, and it makes it a lot more smooth. In Vermont, we're kind of lucky. Our banks are local. You know, we don't have very many national brands, and so they've been very receptive in setting up programs. So the first thing you want to do is gather your payroll tax information, 941s, and those kinds of details. The application is fairly simple. It's only 2 pages, and there's only 1 page that has a couple of data points on it. So it's not that bad to apply. Those that applied early learned they updated the form every day. So when you usually woke up the next morning, you heard back from your bank that the form's changed and you have to resubmit. That's been definitely a bit of a challenge. Also, the SBA is starting to limit non-bank lenders to a smaller amount of money. So the Paycheck Protection Program, again, it's a couple of pages. The entire intent, I sat in a webinar that the Senate put on. The intent was you were supposed to be able to just sign a piece of paper and say, yes, I attest to all this information being accurate. Send me money, essentially is what it was supposed to be. The reality is the banks have stepped in and added many layers of bureaucracy. They're all asking for different paperwork. They're all asking for different types of verification, none of which was in the bill. So it's a bit of an unfortunate circumstance, and a lot of small businesses are running into a wall because they read the bill, and now when they go to apply, it's a very different landscape for them to fill out the paperwork. But again, it's not that bad. The banks have been great at supporting and helping you do the calculations. You're essentially allowed to get 2.5 times 1 month's average payroll. And that includes payroll, health benefits, 401k. It does exclude federal taxes, but you do count state and local taxes. You take that amount, that monthly amount, you multiply by 2.5, that's your loan amount. And then if you hire all your people back, pre-crisis levels, from the day you get the loan, the next 8 weeks, all your payroll expenses, all your utilities, and all of your rent payments will be totaled, whatever you actually spent in that 8 weeks, and that will be subtracted from your loan amount. And that's about 80% given the 2.5 versus a 4-week time period. And so a major point in this is a small business needs to set up a separate bank account. You have to prove that all the transactions that you had went towards payroll, utilities, or lease payments. There was a major hiccup back in the 2008 financial crisis. Those loans, because they weren't managed in separate accounts, the IRS started to question how they spent the money. And so they don't want you double dipping. They don't want you paying down debt. There's a lot of things they don't want you doing. They want you to use the money to hire your people back. And again, that's the best way a small business can not only get through this, but also get their employees working and getting the money and the economy flowing again. And so it's, again, a fairly simple process. Contact your lender. There are other banks in Vermont, fortunately, who are in fact taking non-customers on to fill out the paperwork and to be eligible for the loan. 2 other final points there is, hypothetically, the money is supposed to start flowing tomorrow, Friday, so people could start hiring their people back starting Monday. I've seen no indication from either Treasury or the SBA that that money is, in fact, actually going to start flowing tomorrow. I really hope it does. The second thing is, starting tomorrow, all of our independent contractors, all of our gig workers, which Vermont has a lot of them, they can all start applying for their own revenue stream. And so they'll be able to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program with their own numbers because they were gig workers, Uber drivers, all those people earning gig money or just working as independent contractors get the exact same benefits that the small business owners get. It's a great program.
Can a small business that hasn't had to lay people off but is struggling to keep them, can they apply for payment protection plan, or only those that laid people off are eligible?
It's a great question, Dave, and it is right now a fairly common myth. You do not have to have any financial hardship, any kind of negative impact by the virus. You could be fully employed and you're still eligible to apply for the program. Across the board, there is no downside. Even if you can't pay all the money back, it's a long-term loan at 2%. You can't get that kind of, a small business generally can't borrow money at those kinds of rates. And so I absolutely highly recommend that every single Vermont company go through this process, get that money flowing. If you don't need it, you can just give it back. So ultimately, if in fact you were able to keep all your employees, you were able to keep moving forward, you're in a position to go ahead and apply for that loan and use it the best way to provide training for your staff. A lot of our customers who have come back were considered still to be non-essential workers. You could do training programs. You could upgrade their skills. You could implement new internal marketing programs. There's a lot of things you can do even if your staff are idle, but now back on your payroll.
Are there any resources you would suggest to Vermonters struggling with their businesses during this pandemic?
The best resources that we have found so far have been the direct Small Business Administration website and the Treasury website. There's been a lot of misinformation published even by some banks and by news outlets that don't accurately portray what's actually happening. So I would highly recommend you get all of your guidance directly from the SBA website and from the Treasury website. Having said that, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has done a nice summary 2-page document that really lays it out in very clear language. It addresses seasonal companies. It addresses startups. It's a nice 2-page piece that really gives you an overall idea of how this program was designed to work. And whereas the SBA and the Treasury stuff is accurate, it's just a little bit more full of a little bit of legalese, and it's more difficult to get through. So those would be the recommended resources that I would tap into. The next stage is that every bank is having different requirements for how you're going to apply for the money. So working with your bank and your banker, they are going to clarify how you're going to deliver. So you might actually have to track down, unfortunately, different information and resources that are listed on the SBA and Treasury website. And I guess that's the latitude that Treasury has given the banks in this process to make it work for them more effectively.
Finally, Andrew, in your opinion, what does our financial status post-crisis look like? Are there any specific decisions or turning points that could or would change the future?
I don't think that we're going to see post-crisis as quickly as a lot of people are saying, especially because the $349 billion allocated to the Payment Protection Program, it's going to run out. So I would keep your eye out for new legislation, maybe even a new act, certainly increasing that pool of money. In particular with independent contractors and gig workers starting to apply on April 10th, with guidance provided on April 9th about how to do that on an already overtaxed set of information and dollars flowing through this program. I believe that Congress is going to have to act again to pass another chunk of money. The long-term effects, I think, are going to be very interesting. I think from a business perspective, people are learning how to work from home. Jobs that previously thought they couldn't be done from home are now being done and done well. So I think the way people work is going to change radically. But I also think it leads us to consider as individuals, when you have a job, to diversify. Have a side gig, use some of your skills to have multiple sources of income and not just rely on that one employer for the next time a crisis like this happens. So I think there is going to be a lot of change in the way businesses work, a lot of the way people approach their own work. And in the end, I think one of the things we learned from this whole crisis is that the safety nets we have here in the United States are probably not as effective as, let's say, some of the ones in European countries that were set up to help the individual, the one with the fewest resources. One of my personal philosophies has always been that you rate a society on the health and wellness of those with the least number of resources. And I think we've learned through this that not only does that group suffer the most, a lot of them are actually considered to be essential workers at this point and have to go to work every day and risk their lives, and they have the fewest resources. So I'm hoping those are the kinds of things that we as a government, we as a society, we as a state, because I think Vermont will have more opportunity to create some of those programs to support our people rather than getting something done at the federal level. But I think those changes in mind, we can make a system that would support our individuals and our small businesses more effectively the next time we have this kind of crisis.
Thank you, Andrew. This has been really informative and really appreciate your taking the time to be with us. To our viewers, thank you every time for tuning in. We hope these are informative for you. Again, as always, if you'd like more information about what's going on in Vermont in the moment, Vermont's Department of Health website, healthvermont.gov, has a lot of information. Also, you can visit my website at zuckerman4vt.com for other COVID-19 resources. I'm Lieutenant Governor David Zuckerman. This is one of my many conversations I'm having with Vermonters across the spectrum during this crisis, and we hope that you'll join us again.